Welcome back to Carneades.org. Today we're going to be looking at personal identity, specifically the persistence question. This is going to be kind of an introduction to personal identity, and then we're going to dig a little bit deeper in the following videos. Speaking of future videos, so you know, this is video number 95. We have a special surprise for video number 100, which is going to be, I'm going to take a look at finally debunking Descartes' the cogito. Cogito ergo sum, I think, therefore I am. One of what has been said to be the most powerful statements and weapons against the skeptic. We're going to look at how even that can be doubted. But in order to get there, we need to go through personal identity. So, what is personal identity? Well, let's take a look. You may remember a while ago we did a video on something called Theseus' paradox, which was a paradox just for normal, good old-fashioned identity. Basically, the question is, Theseus has a ship, he's sailing along in the ocean. At various points, one or more of the planks in his ship gets rotten and needs to be replaced. The question is this still the same ship? Most people would say after a single plank that it is. But it goes on, and all sorts of different planks get rotten. At what point does this no longer become Theseus' ship? After the last of the original planks is replaced? If you still think that this is Theseus' ship, what would happen if someone took all those rotten planks and built another ship? Which one of these is now Theseus' ship? This is the problem for identity with objects, things like ships. What personal identity is it's the question of how is a person the same over time? What makes a person the same person, just like what makes a ship the same ship? Before we get too deep into this, we need to look at a difference. There's a distinction between numerical and qualitative identity. Now, numerical identity is to say that two things are one in the same. Things are one and not in fact two. Whereas qualitative identity is to say that things are qualitatively identical. That is to say that they're indiscernible. They can still be two different things, they just can't be told apart. With numerical identity, you may be able to tell the two things apart, but you're calling them the same thing. With qualitative identity, you can't tell the two things apart, but you're still admitting that they're two separate things. So, numerical identity is usually talking about how something could be the same over time. Generally, something at an earlier point, after some time passes, it may have gone through some changes, but we would still say it's the same thing. Qualitative identity, on the other hand, is saying that two objects are indiscernible. So we have two objects that may be different in space, but they look exactly the same. They also may be different in time. But the point here is we're talking about two separate objects. With numerical identity, we're talking about one object being identical to itself at a later time. Now, there are some interesting positions which say that the only kind of numerical identity we can get is qualitative identity. Basically, that's saying the only way something can be the same over time is if it's actually indiscernible from its previous self. This would be the kind of person who says that once you lose a single plank from the ship of Theseus, it is no longer the same ship. We'll look more into that kind of view later, once we get to those fantastic videos doubting the cogito. For now, let's take a look at some of the things that personal identity is not. This is not talking about a journey of self-discovery, life changes, the different properties that may have changed for you, or reinventing yourself. To be really clear, we're not talking about, oh, you went to a different country and it changed your life. Sure, that's great that it changed your life, but that doesn't mean you weren't identical to the person before they went to that different country. It's great that you had fantastic life experiences there, but that's not what we're talking about here. If that was personal identity, what we would be saying is that you died at some point in that life experience and some new person was born in there or was created. That's not what we're talking about when we say, oh, it was a life-changing experience. It's a completely different thing. What we are talking about in personal identity is how can you begin to exist and stay consistent and not become a different person through your whole life. It's harder to develop a criterion than you might think. So, exactly what we're looking for is, under what possible circumstances is a person who exists at one time identical with something that exists at another time? Basically, how are you identical to some previous version of you, a younger self perhaps? How are you identical to an older self? And we say something and not a person, just in case we're talking about something that may not be a person, like a fetus or a zygote. Can you be identical with those things? That's what the question's asking. So, this also is posing such questions as, are you the same person as the fetus that was in your mother's womb? Are you the same person as the one that was blackout drunk last night, even if you don't remember it? Are you the same person if your brain is transplanted into someone else's body? Are you the same person as someone whose brain is identical, who's thinking the same thoughts as you? Are you the same person as you in a coma? And finally, are you the same person as your swamp man? If you don't know what a swamp man is, check out my video on philosophical zombies. In order to answer these questions, we have a couple different approaches. We're going to be looking at the two most prominent approaches, the psychological approach and the somatic approach. The psychological approach is based in memories or cognitive states, while the somatic approach is based in your body. First, I'll offer an explanation of each of these approaches, and then I will do a video providing a number of objections to them. I'll leave you with a quote from William Shakespeare. "This above all, to thine own self be true." Watch this video and more at Carneades.org, and stay skeptical, everybody.